Today I get to talk to you about some of the new features we introduced in 2019. Later on we'll also do a quick demo with some malicious links, see how that goes. First off, I'm going to talk about the Emsisoft Cloud Console because I think a lot of you are going to find it useful, especially if you have multiple computers. If you run a business, an enterprise, the Starship Enterprise, whatever you do, I think this is a really good step in terms of having more remote management, better policies, better automation, all that stuff. Now I've been following this feature ever since private beta, and I've been really happy with the way it's turned out in terms of the final implementation. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it as well in the comments. Now, if you're a new user, there are two ways you can approach this. So first of all, if you're installing Emsisoft on a new system, you can directly go to My Emsisoft, download from there. Or if you already have Emsisoft installed, you can just connect it to your existing account and workspaces, which I'll talk about in a few seconds. Over here, of course, I've already configured that part, so we'll just go to My Emsisoft. Now the workspaces feature is still in beta, but I believe all the functionality is already there. As you can see, I've set up a default workspace for TPSC. This is what I'm going to use to show it to you guys. At the moment, we just have one computer. That's MSI. That's my fancy laptop that I use for gaming and making TPSC videos on the side. If you look at my release schedule, well, that's what my priorities seem to indicate. But anyway, you can see its current status, the time of the last scan, last alert, pretty standard stuff. But if I actually click on it, look at this. This is what I think is super cool. You have the exact same UI that you would have on the desktop online. So the client-side interface and the remote management interface is exactly the same. I've seen a lot of implementations of remote management. I think I've talked a lot in the past about Sophos and how they've done a really good job at it. But one of my complaints has always been that there's been limitations, either on the remote management end or on the client end. For example, with some products that use a remote management interface, the client interface is very limited. So it doesn't allow you to do much from the client. All you can do is just scan and update. But in this case, you have full functionality, you have all the settings, and you also have the exact same thing on the web interface or the cloud console. What would be a good demo to do? I guess I can just run a scan. Let's do a new malware scan. Personally, I quite like this because you don't have to learn two different UI schemes. But you might be saying, hey, wait a minute, Leo, this sounds nice for people who just have one computer or just a couple of them. But what if I have a large business and I have groups of computers and I want to set up rules for the whole thing? I don't want to have to do it computer by computer with this UI. Of course, you don't have to do that. There is also a separate interface that you can use to configure templates. And as you can see for the demo here, we have management, development, sales. So assuming these are like different branches of your company, you could just configure specific settings for each of these. So let's say for sales, we want to auto resolve with notifications for threats only. Because let's face it, salespeople, oh, I'm going to get so much hate for this. But for development, we set it to alert because maybe they're experimenting with other programs and there might be a few false alerts triggered by the behavior blocker. So you can define settings the way you want for each of these groups independently, and then you can just apply them to all the computers that are within that group. You can also set permission policies, of course, so you know who's an admin, who's not an admin. Always go by the principle of least privilege, I say. So give users as much privilege as they need. No more, no less, but specifically no more. Having privileges you don't need only means it's a security vulnerability for something bad to happen. So that's basically the Cloud Console in a nutshell. For those of you who will be setting it up after watching this video, I'll mention a couple of things that I personally had trouble with when I was working with it the first time. One of the things to note is if you previously had Emsisoft and you signed on to my.emsisoft.com later, you will likely have your license and your device not assigned to any workspace. So what you want to do when you create your first workspace is apply the license to that workspace, because otherwise when you try to connect the product online, it's going to say you don't have any active license. So make sure you apply the license and then try to connect your device to the online interface. The rest of it should be pretty simple, straightforward. You can always add devices very easily. Or if you already have the product, as I mentioned, you can just go into settings, remote management, and if it's not online, it's going to give you an option to connect. So that's the fancy Cloud Console. Now let's talk about the browser extension, which is another feature that I've been playing around with a lot lately. Now something interesting to note about this is that I believe this is free. So if you want web protection, you can just go and download it. It's on the Chrome App Store. It's also on the Firefox Store. Should be pretty easy to grab. Now, previously, Emsisoft worked with surf protection, which was a blacklist of hosts. And you might wonder, well, why do I need the browser security if you already have surf protection? Now, one of the issues with surf protection is that it doesn't allow us to block specific malware on websites. So what we can do with surf protection is we would block malicious hosts. But the problem is if somebody uploads malware to a popular website like Google Drive, let's say, we can't just block the entire host. Now with the browser extension, we can blacklist specific malware on the website, we can block malicious redirects. It's much more powerful, so I'd definitely recommend installing it, especially if you already use Emsisoft. But enough of me talking. I know you guys are anxious for some malware action, so I'm just going to head over to VxFault so we can try a few links and see how that goes. First, I'm going to disable the surf protection because, well, we want to see how the extension does. Maybe I should use my Emsisoft to do this just so it'd be cooler. Yep, let's do that. Let's go in here and disable surf protection. In a few moments, that should reflect on the client. And ta-da! It actually works. I don't want to deal with this UI, so let me just get, let's see. Oh, there we go. This is much easier to work with. Now, this is obviously not a test in any way. It's just to show you how the browser security works. And there you go. Website blocked. Tells you the host, it tells you the reason, and you can report an error or visit the site anyway. This site, of course, is suspected malware. Seems accurate looking at the file name. Let's try a JPEG. Ooh, this one's dead. Let's try another. Turns out it's the same host, so that's an easy block. Now, a lot of these links are going to be dead, so I'm going to try more recent ones. Still the same host. Let's try a different host. And blocked again. I think you guys kind of get the idea. This is how the web extension works. There isn't really that much to it, but it's just a really cool add-on. And as I mentioned, like in terms of functionality, it's just technically more flexible and powerful, so I would recommend using it.